I'm going to run through the highlights of the presentation I'm giving to the General Education Conference this Friday, which I guess is tomorrow. And my goal is not only to get this recorded so people who are interested in checking it out could see it, but also so that I can time myself. I'm hopeful that just going through these slides will be about 15 minutes, 15 to 20, because I've got 3 activities built in that'll take about 10 minutes, and I've got 50 minutes total. So let's see how we do here. All right, so this presentation is that's correct and that's okay. My name's Tim Zick, teach at Fox Valley Technical College. You can find a lot of things that I'm up to, including this presentation, on my Facebook page I made for myself as an educator, which is Tim Zick at Work on Facebook. So feel free to check that out. In my math and logic classes, one of the big themes is problem solving. And it's really my belief that you get better at problem solving only by solving new problems. Okay, you can get better at crossword puzzles by doing crossword puzzles. You can get better at Sudoku by doing Sudoku. You can get better at dancing by dancing. But, well, some of us, but you can only get better at problem solving by exposing yourself to new and different things. I should note this presentation changed in scope a little bit from the time I first submitted it to this presentation, and that's because the organizers asked me to make it more so that there'd be more experience in it and less report out. So this activity, or this presentation, will have more activities in it than it initially did, and we'll be doing more things together. All right, so speaking of activities, I use activities in my classes, and they're at the beginning of classes. They're between 10 and 40 minutes. I really tailor them based on what we're doing the rest of the day, not in that they have anything to do with what we're doing the rest of the day, but in that I want to give myself enough time to do everything else. So I generally teach this class in a 1 hour and 20 minute time frame. So these are somewhere between, a 12th and a third of the time. You're going to do some of these, well, the people in my presentation, well, you're not as someone at home. But here's a couple a student comment and then some ground rules. So here's what one of the students wrote on their evaluation. The start of class activities help, as in a morning class. I was usually still close to asleep. The activities got me to think and helped wake me up, so paying attention was easier. I know we're right before lunch here when I'm giving this talk, so hopefully they'll keep your interest until that time. All right, these are from the first day slides. I'm talking about, grades and activities, and the way that I actually run this in class is activities are worth 10% of student grades, and the only requirement for them getting those points is that they actively participate in the activities. They don't have to do well in the activities. They don't have to know all the answers or any answers. They just have to try. Okay, so when I get to describing these, I say during these activities, we need to be respectful of each other. Someone may be thinking and they may need quiet. Okay, that's especially more when we're going around individually. If we're taking turns and it's not your turn, please don't blurt out the answer because it's not your turn, all right? Someone may give an answer that sounds stupid to you. Don't be a jerk about it. In fact, don't be a jerk at all, okay? If you can avoid being a jerk, these will go really well for all of us. We need a class that feels safe, where ideas and solutions are evaluated and not judged. All right, so here's an activity that we're going to do. It's called Heteronyms. I would ask if anyone knew the definition of a heteronym. So depending on if you do or you don't, here's the definition that I'm going with. 2 words are heteronyms if they are spelled the same but have different meanings and pronunciations. Okay. In my classroom, I split the class into 2 teams, usually. As long as the class is big enough, I'll split it into 2 teams. If it's kind of a small group, I'll just have them work all together. I'll give a team a clue, and I want them to figure out, or I'll give them a single clue to 2 words that are heteronyms, and I want them to give me the 2 words. We would take turns between the groups. If you guess and you don't get it, or you can't come up with a guess, then I move on to the other group. In my classroom, we would play for a set amount of time, usually 20 minutes. Here, with my presentation tomorrow, I'm going to do it for 10 minutes because I want to get 3 activities in. So I may make people guess before they can think or before they're ready. And remember, you're in a group. I always do this one in groups, so throw out ideas. Okay, here's some examples. If I said these W word heteronyms describe the damage inflicted to me as I coiled some string, The correct answer would be wound, wound, because wound, like to wind string, and wound, like to be hurt, are spelled the same. They're heteronyms. Okay, another example. I would have the people in my presentation doing these now, but here's an example for the video. These D-word heteronyms are the action of a bird symbolizing peace when it jumped off of a cliff. So the two things here, bird symbolizing peace and jumped off a cliff, that would be dove, dove. These B-word heteronyms describe my action of paying respect to a stringed weapon. Well, a stringed weapon may be a bow, so this is a bow, bow. These D-word heteronyms are a collection of published articles about eaten food. So if you think about the collection, I usually see the large print, Reader's Digest, and then digest is food. Those are heteronyms. And then these M-word heteronyms are a really tiny unit of time. Students usually struggle with this one. We'll see if my guys tomorrow struggle with it or not. Because they try to come up with one word that means a really tiny unit of time. But really the two clues here are something really tiny and then also a unit of time. The unit of time being a minute and then something tiny being minute. Okay. So in my class, when we do the heteronyms game, the host needs to do the following things. They have to have the right answers available or know them. Okay, they have to call on the students in groups and they have to keep things moving without rushing students. You can rush them a little bit, but the idea here is really that you get that conversation sparked amongst the team. This works decently with individuals. It turns out that this is a much harder activity, or some of the clues really vary in difficulty. So I find it's better to put people into groups so that they can talk it out. And the time here is really variable, which is nice because I can do it for as long as I want. And really, I've got enough that I could do 40 minutes without much problem, especially if I was going back and forth between two teams. So I can cut it off at any time and have enough clues. A couple notes. I don't know if you noticed, but the clues weren't perfect. I didn't deliver them perfectly, even in this video. And I was able to pronounce the pairs, but often I find that students or people doing this, like, they'll get a word and they just say it twice, and they're just like, they can't make that distinction because they're thinking too much about the words. The point is, activities don't need to be perfect. This is one of the key points of this whole thing. If you want to do activities, you want to do something new and different with your class, they don't have to be perfect. Okay, it's likely they won't be perfect the first time you do them. Every semester I try to do at least 1 or 2 new activities just to see if I can replace some duds or some ones that aren't that exciting or just get more into the rotation. And they are not perfect. They're not great the first time always. Don't worry if it's not perfect. Worry about trying something new, okay? Try new things in your class. It's the only way you're going to innovate and change and get better. All right, here's some more student comments. Loved playing the games. By far one of my favorite classes, perfect balance between work and having fun in class. Zick makes math really fun and easy to learn with in-class activities, and this class is not what I expected. We had quite a bit of fun while learning. All these guys are talking like this is just something fun that has nothing to do with them being able to learn or be better thinkers. Okay, all of these activities are problem solving. They're all focused on getting students thinking and thinking differently. All right, next activity I want to demonstrate is called nonverbal communication. By this, I mean literally nonverbal communication. So for this activity, I would have my group communicate with each other without using words, without talking, without writing anything down, without using their cell phones, without pointing to letters like on the wall or on the presentation. And what happens is I give an order to line up in, and then the group needs to arrange themselves without talking or using props. Okay, so totally nonverbal. My usual hint is you can't do much, but you can gesture emphatically. Okay, a lot of emphatic gestures during this game. I judge on how many mistakes the group makes first, and then how long it takes. And I won't stop the timer until the group or someone has indicated to me that they're done. Okay. I judge this on it being better to take longer than make mistakes. It would be better to take 5 minutes with 0 errors than take 30 seconds with 1 error. So the real goal here is to line up correctly first, and then it's to do it fast. I do a couple of rounds. In my classes, I do 4. Tomorrow I'm going to do 2. And then I check, does anybody have questions? So then here's what we do. I read this, line up according to your birthday, month, and day. Earlier in the year should be closer to the front of the room. And then I start my timer. And then I watch as the students meander about, make weird number symbols with their hands. Usually there's some laughter, at least during the second round or by the second round. And then once they're all done and once, they're all lined up and looking around confused, I give them that look like, are you done? And they say, yeah. Then I stop the timer. I go down the line and see what order they're in, if they're in the right order. I then write down how many people were out of place, which if someone's in the wrong spot, that's 1. But if someone's in you need to figure out how many people are actually in the wrong spots. And sometimes it's less than it appears because you've got a few people mixed around, which can make 4 people in the wrong order. Anyway, I count the number of bears, write that down, say, okay, anybody want to say anything before we go again? And usually they don't. So then we go again. So here's the second way I'd line up. Line up alphabetically by the spelling of your middle name. Earlier in the alphabet should be closer to the front of the room. People with no middle names should be first. Again, I start a timer. It took me a while to realize I needed to put in the no middle names should be first, or tell them where to go, because otherwise that was really confusing. A couple times I've had students with the same exact middle names, which is exciting to watch them. That usually adds quite a bit of time because they go through their entire names trying to move their hands so that they can see them. Anyway, once the group tomorrow is done, or once my groups are normally done, I'd stop, again, go through, see if they're in the right order, and then record the times and errors. What I do with this information in my classrooms, I've actually done this every semester I've taught math and logic, and I record all of the data. And so each semester I show the students how they stacked up in terms of each other, and then I keep a running list of the 5 best times, so fewest errors and fastest times, and then the 1 worst performance, usually with a ton of errors. But here's what you have to do for the host. You need to keep track of the time. Make sure that they're not talking, okay? Not talking is the whole point. So just make sure they're not talking. Usually I threaten them, if it's an error, or if you talk again, I'll give you an error or something like that. There's only one way to do this, I think, get everybody working together. And then time, it's fairly fixed. It's between 5 and 6 minutes per question, not because it takes them that long to line up, but because you've got to go through and check them, and you've got to, give them the rules and that kind of thing. Okay, a couple notes. I like to be the host. I like to be the host of a game show. Okay, activities do not have to be like that, but a lot of mine are because I'm comfortable in front of a group. I'm comfortable in front of my students. I want to be in charge and be the host and be the one asking the questions. Okay, because I'm comfortable with that, that's what my activities look like. Secondly, don't be afraid to make mistakes and learn from them. If you're going to start doing these or try one of these or try some of these, you'll make mistakes. You'll mess up. We tell our students all the time, it's okay if you make a mistake. It's true for us too. Okay, it's okay if you have an activity that's a disaster. You can all laugh and joke about it later. Not a big deal. You don't even have to make this a teachable moment. You don't have to say, oh my gosh, so I did all this planning and things don't work out. And you can just let it go and say, man, that was a disaster. No big deal. Here's another student comment. The different games and activities we did were entertaining and often were able to tie into the material we were covering in class at the time. At times it would take a little while before I realized that our activity was related to our material since it approached the material from a completely different angle and application. I love this comment because my activities have nothing to do with what I teach in class. Okay, that lining up without talking has nothing to do with how you find the intersection of 2 sets. The heteronyms we talked about don't tie into truth tables or algebra at all, but this student saw connections between them. They saw that way of thinking or something in the way that we did the activities that gave them some insight into the material. That's great. I love it. Not my intention at all. In fact, I work hard to make it so that the material or the activities are not based on the material we do, especially that day. I want them to be different. I want them to not be connected directly, because otherwise I'm just making them think about what they're going to think about. I can make them think about the material by doing the material. So I want these activities to be different. This person saw a connection. It's great. I need to remember to put in an end quote on that slide. We'll see if I do. I probably won't. All right. My last activity is called melted. It's called melted because melted is the opposite of frozen, and frozen is the title of a movie. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go around and call on people. So we'll just go around in order, or we would go around in order. And I'm going to give you the opposite, or what could be the opposite of the title of a movie. The goal is to give me the actual movie title. Give yourself a little time. We will do this one spelling bee style, which means that, and this is how I normally do it in my class as well, once you get one wrong and someone else gets it right, you would sit down. Okay, so I go around, and if you know it, great, you say it. If not, you sit down, not a big deal. And then we play until we get to a champion. A couple examples of these. So if I were to say ugly man, the movie title I would be looking for would be Pretty Woman. If I were to say nice boys, okay, the opposite movie to that would be Mean Girls, and so on. Okay, a bunch of these out there. I would read more off, but let me get to the notes. What does the host have to do here? Know the correct answers, call on students, keep things moving without rushing too much. Player options. This works with any division. You can do individuals, you can do groups. I like the spelling bee format because it's fun. It just adds a little twist to it. And the time here is variable. This time it's variable in that if you're going to do spelling bee, you have to go until someone wins or till you run out of clues. Usually I find in a group of 20, that'll take 15 to 20 minutes for one person to come out on top, because I give them time to think and that kind of thing. All right. This entire activity, the format of the spelling bee, I totally stole all of this from an NPR show called Ask Me Another. It was the last game on their June 11th, 2015 show. I love Ask Me Another. It's a great quiz show. It's so great that I wanted to use something from it. You should do the same. If you want to make your own activities, steal and adapt. Okay, don't reinvent the wheel. Take anything, anywhere, and steal and adapt it. If you're like me, you have a ton of stuff sitting around. A ton of things you always wanted to do something with. And what I finally realized was no one was going to say, okay, Tim, now it's the time. Now you need to go in there and tell your students those things. I realized I just had to go for it. So here's the thing. I give you permission to try crazy things in your classes. Okay? Your students will learn anyway, I promise. But I give you the permission to go for it. Use some of that stuff. Try some things. Remember, it won't be perfect the first time, and that's okay. At this point, I would stop for questions. A couple things that I'd like to come up are, do you find that students really take the freedom or learn how it's okay to give bad answers? And they do. The activities really lower the level of stress in the class, I believe. And you saw that students think we're playing games at the beginning. They think that that's a good time. I had my students today tell me, oh, good, I love this part. I love this class because we get to play games. And yeah, they're like games, but they are thinking. And they're all different. They're all different ways of thinking. And I find that freedom of answering those questions and throwing out answers and laughing and goofing around really helps them feel more comfortable when we get to the math stuff. So when I ask a question, if nobody's sure, someone will usually say something. Just great. And that's a very, very helpful side effect of these problem-solving things. All right, that's the end of my presentation. Let's see how I did. About 20 minutes. I think I'll be able to make it tomorrow. Thanks for watching, and if I see you at the conference tomorrow, great. Otherwise, feel free to post questions on this video feed. Thank you. Oh boy, I have to unlock my phone to stop it. And